I take this time to announce to my colleagues legislation that I will be following today, the Newspaper Revitalization Act. I do this for many reasons, but let me first start with a quote from Thomas Jefferson, a man who was vilified by newspapers daily. He said once, if I had to choose between government without newspapers and newspapers without government, I wouldn't hesitate to choose the latter. I think that Thomas Jefferson was pointing out an obvious fact of the importance of newspapers to a free democracy and to our country. From Watergate to AIDS, from tobacco to Enron, newspapers have helped to inform the public of the important issues of our time. We depend so much on newspapers, particularly for our local communities. Well, Madam President, they're in trouble today. Community newspapers are going into bankruptcy. They're closing their bureaus. They're eliminating local coverage. We have found around our nation, the Seattle Post, the Rocky Mountain News, the Philadelphia Daily News, the San Francisco Chronicle, and in my own city of Baltimore, the Baltimore Sun, are either in bankruptcy or facing bankruptcy and closure. And the lists are continuing. And the reason is quite simple. Some say it's the economy. It's more than the economy. It's the change in the way Americans get news today. Advertising revenues for local papers are way down because of the many avenues available for advertisers to get a message across to their to consumers. The problem is that we depend upon the local news in order to develop our local stories and to cover our local events. And as local papers are closing, we're losing a valuable tradition in America, critically important to our communities, critically important to our democracy. So the legislation that I am following today, the Newspaper Revitalization Act, offers an opportunity to save our local papers. It allows them to be nonprofits, to operate like we do in many of the other media areas, such as public radio, public television, to allow for the opportunity for nonprofits to operate our local community papers. Now, this is not going to be an option of it that a lot of papers will choose. They want to make profit. They want to do their commercial. They want to make endorsements of candidates. But for some papers, it will allow us to save local newspapers. The restriction on going nonprofit would be that you could not endorse candidates. You can certainly report on elections, but it will allow your investors to be able to make contributions and have the advantage of our tax code. It would also allow the paper to operate, we hope, without the concern of having to have advertising, as much advertising dollars, because they can then rely more on contributors who want to preserve local press for their community. Now, some might say, well, will this mean a loss of revenue for the taxpayers of this country? The answer is no. Most of these community papers are losing money today. They're not paying taxes. We're trying to save an avenue available for our community. We're trying to save not only local jobs, and it will save local jobs, but the ability of a community to have the pride of their newspaper. And quite frankly, in my lifetime, I've seen many of our municipalities go from 2 newspapers, daily newspapers, down to 1, now to none. And the local content is, in many cases, is non-existent. So I hope my colleagues will look at this legislation as an effort to try to preserve a great tradition in America that's important for our democracy, important for our community, and I think we'd be doing the right thing if we allow community papers to have the option to become a nonprofit. Doesn't require them to, but the option to become a nonprofit so we can save community papers.